How's everyone doing today? How are you doing? Nighthound, it's good to see you. It's good to see you. It's been a while. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started with this week's software engineering news. We have something fun at the end, hopefully. If we have enough time, we're gonna do it. And then you guys are gonna let me know if you like it, if you'd like to see more of it. I kind of think it's a fun take on something. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right. There's something more important than security that we're going to start off with. Something more important than security. And that's the fact that on May 17th, well, actually it was May 18th because it took a whole day or basically 2 days because it's 22 hours there, 22 hours back. So 2 days after the 17th, Voyager 1 is finally sending data back to Earth 22 light hours away, which is about 24 billion kilometers, 15 billion miles. That's right, Nighthound. The news is now on Friday. You missed that. The news is now on Friday because I wanted Sundays to myself, so I had a day off. I hope that works out. So I do it at lunch. This is my lunch. I hope you guys enjoy my lunch as much as I do. Anyways, so 2 of the 4 systems are back and operational. We have taken back control from the aliens. I'm pretty sure it's aliens that have taken over Voyager 1. That's the unofficial diagnostics, but we're getting it back. So I'm happy about that. Let's jump. We can jump now into security and some real news. I mean, that is news. I'm not sure if you guys care as much as I do, but we'll jump into some real news. There was only one security incident of any real note that I saw. Hopefully, again, you guys should bring your own news if you have seen anything, was that the cybersecurity researchers observed a spike in email phishing campaigns starting in March. So basically, I don't even know how to pronounce it. It emerges as the ICE ID's successor in phishing campaigns. So there's a latest phishing campaign bot out there trying to phish you. So be really careful what you guys respond to. The next thing on the list is more pertinent, is the release of the OpenSSF open source security, Siren. So Siren is basically a way for security people and open source collaborators to have a place to go to communicate, to understand, to talk about open source security. So I'm going to post this in the chat. I'm going to post this in chat for you all. And this is supposed to give a place, a channel for open source, the open source community to be able to communicate about vulnerabilities and help people that are affected inside the community. So if you're an open source contributor, if you have an open source community, this might be really valuable to get on board with. So at the very first, it's right now, you can register for a mailing on real-time threat intelligence updates. I've already registered for that, so hopefully I can bring anything that's interesting out of there into the public's eye via the news. Yeah, I'll be watching that. All right. And that was really it for security. I have you can sign up here. I already gave you guys the link. This is the mailing list that it's kicking off with some guidelines on how to send a message to that. So that was it for security. Did anybody see anything else in security? I'll give you guys just a second. Okay. Okay. Seconds up. Seconds up. Let's jump into I mean, we actually have a short day. We actually have a short day, which is good because I have some hopefully interesting stuff coming up at the end of this that we can spend a little bit of time on. All right. So the next portion is AI then. If nobody else has security related things, let's jump into AI news. All right. So there was the introduction of GitHub Copilot extensions. This is an interesting concept, mildly terrifying, knowing AI companies' reputation with data. And this is probably one of the biggest things that they need to work on is they now have a terrible reputation of data management. OpenAI is maybe the worst, which is surprising to talk about. I mean, Google's pretty bad. You can't even use messaging apps without them reading your messages. You can't use Slack without Slack reading your message. Actually, that's a perfect piece of news we didn't cover. Slack trains on your private messages. Now, they did walk this back. But Slack started training its machine learning models on user messages, files, and content without explicit permission. It was an opt-out training, and it was on your private paid account. Yeah, this was a huge blunder, misstep by Slack. They came back and basically said, well, legally we're allowed to because of our terms of service. But this is being a bad steward. This is the type of crap that every single AI company is pulling that is getting very tiring. If you want large regulatory bodies to let you into their countries and things like that, this is the type of stuff you can't be pulling. This is the type of crap you can't be pulling. Now, that being said, if you're comfortable with Microsoft, I'm not here shouting whether you should be comfortable with them or not, but if you are and want to give them more of your data and trust them not to train on it, well, there's this GitHub Copilot extensions, which is unlocking unlimited possibilities. Is that a guarantee? I feel like that shouldn't be a guarantee. With our new ecosystem of partners. So basically, this is extensions that are basically bringing the ability for Copilot to basically leverage those almost like a RAG. So when you go and ask a question, I don't know the exact implementation, which I'm actually kind of interested to see how to implement your own because they said that you can. So that might be something we try on stream at one of these Saturdays. Actually, it could be something we do on Monday. I'm going to stream on Monday for a couple of hours. If there's something fun you guys would like to do, I'd be up for doing it. Anyways, Monday's a holiday in the US, so I'll be streaming a little bit. Okay. So that being said, if you use DataStax, Docker, MongoDB, Microsoft Azure Teams, McKinsey & Company, don't use McKinsey & Company. I know saying that means that I will never be hired by them, and I'll take that. Launch Darkly, Octopus Deploy. These are pretty big names, pretty well used. You can basically install the integration with Copilot Chat, and Copilot Chat can use the data from these things within context. So basically, if you're having a problem and there's some data in MongoDB, it can use that. Now, this is where I ask you, do you trust Microsoft with the data that's in your MongoDB? Do you trust them with your Sentry and your Stripe? I don't know. That's for you and your security officer to talk about. All right. Further on in the AI news, I saw this release by IBM, the open source ecosystem of Watson X. So Watson originally was like IBM's AI stuff, and I'm not sure that it did very well. That being said, though, they've come out with Watson X, and Watson X is a conglomeration of a bunch of open source tools to build basically a machine learning pipeline, which is actually kind of cool. So they have these nice graphs, and let me post this in the chat for everyone. Gregory, it's been a while. I hope you've been doing well and you're okay. It has been a while. So I took a little bit of time this week to actually check out a little bit of what Watson X stack was. Of course, they're shilling a red hat in this, but they have a couple interesting projects in here that I haven't actually used that are actually open source, and it's combined with PyTorch. So some of these are Codeflare, which we can go look at Codeflare. I brought it up. But these are open source projects that they've made. So some of them are IBM specific, like the Ray project is IBM stuff. So anything under Ray project is IBM. But they combine them with things like PyTorch. And the idea here is to give you end-to-end workflows for your machine learning pipelines. Very interesting. I haven't used it. But I think it's worth checking out if you're getting into this. Yeah. So yeah, that was it for AI stuff. There was some stuff around OpenAI. Of course, they've been abusing your data. They've literally months ago said that they had to steal your data or else it wouldn't have been possible to build what they had. That was like their defense in court, or one of them. So. No surprise there. All right. Did you guys see anything else in AI? You know what? I have a rant on AI. I don't do it because I feel like I'm not knowledgeable enough, but I actually spend a lot of time reading scientific papers and stuff on it, and the approach that we're taking, I think, is hard limited. There's been research that even says that says we're getting diminishing returns, which means, and this is actually not even there's some anecdotal evidence as well. Like if you look at the latest releases from OpenAI, they're not the huge steps. If you used OpenAI 2 and ChatGPT 3, the difference was huge. The step up was huge. But now let's talk about ChatGPT 3 versus ChatGPT 4. It was better, and it was especially better in a few very, very pinpointed areas. But it wasn't a huge step. So like it would generate the same code, but it would create a separate function for a piece. Again, it was a little bit better, but not that huge step that you were seeing. And then 4.0 feels like the same thing. I think they didn't call it 5 because it didn't feel good enough to be another step. But that's the problem, is it's the same amount of time that the other steps took, and they threw billions of dollars at training it. But did it get that much better? Is it faster? Sure. Is it multi-model? Sure. They've added stuff, and it's better, but it feels very, very much more incremental now. And the problem is, for it to do the things that it does, it needs to not be slowing down. It needs to be accelerating in its progress, or it's never going to reach it. Like, it's already eating the world's power. And GPTs are just statistical analysis. I mean, again, the chief scientist at OpenAI was just saying, I mean, this is the premise. This is the premise. I'll show you the premise really quickly. Stream life, new drawing. The premise is this. If we have these data points here, these here, like this. All right, and then this is a graph. No, nothing. And our AI fits this line to it. And these are real points that we know. Maybe it hallucinates this here, and this is a real thing. Now, the problem with this, and this would be like the best case scenario, it invented this based off of all of this statistical analysis. I'll say invented, but whatever. And this is what a lot of scientists do, is they see these patterns and they execute on the pattern to say, hey, if we follow this pattern out, so that makes sense and this is good. But this isn't general intelligence. This is really darn good statistical analysis. Now, the real problem is, if you notice, none of these dots fall on the line. So the real thing might be here. So this is actually a lie. That's the real problem. It could be here. It could be here. Only one of these dots falls on the line. And that's generally how it works. So, yeah, anyways, there's that. Let's get back to the news. Gregory, exactly. They have done amazing things, and I'm not taking away from that. But it is still just the same old linear algebra on a bigger data set. And eventually you run out of bigger data sets, and that's the big problem. I think we have too hyper-focused on the GPT formula, and we're losing out on the better stuff that could happen. That could be. So. I also just don't think it's if you're looking for actual general intelligence or machine intelligence, as I like to call it, it's not the way. All right, or I don't think it's the way. Let me put it that way. I could be wrong. Generally not wrong, but I could be. Let's move on. There's a lot of smarter people that disagree with me. Now, I also called blockchain. Maybe I'm onto something. Let's move on to open source news. We have a couple pieces of open source news that were interesting. For all of you React haters, this is out there for you today. Facebook released the React compiler as of 7 hours ago. This is burning hot news. So for all of you hating on React, for the longest of time, React didn't have a compiler. That actually led to a lot of the problems that people hate. You hate that state that you have in the front end that Vue and Svelte deal with so easily. And that's because React didn't have this compiler. Well, in the latest version of React, they have a new React compiler that basically brings it on par with a lot of the newer things like Vue. And they have a compiler, and they open sourced it. It wasn't originally open source. They had talked about that they were going to open source it, but it is now finally open source. So you can go to Facebook's React and get the React compiler. This next piece of open source news is a journey that I want to support people that went through it. Was this completing the largest migration in Kubernetes history? All right, so this wasn't a Kubernetes to Kubernetes cluster migration like it might sound, but what it was the removal of internal support for every cloud provider. So originally, when you created a service that was a load balancer, this was internal to Kubernetes to handle that cloud provider. In the end, it was something like 1.5 million lines of code to handle GCP, Azure, and EKS. And basically after those three, they were like, no more inside of this. And so basically this tells the story of the cloud controller manager that now handles that and allows any cloud to implement their own tools around that, basically anything that they want. So I'm going to post this. Kudos to the people that worked on this. Yeah, they list the KEPs and everything. It's a pretty cool story. I know that I've talked to you guys about it. We cover the release notes whenever Kubernetes releases. And yeah, there you go. That was it for open source. Did you guys see anything else for open source news? Anything else at all this week? All right. Oh, excuse me. Let's move on to cloud news. Now, Google already had a bad week last week when they deleted an entire account and took some form of credit. Now, it seems like there was joint responsibility on that, but there was some amount of blame on Google's side. Now, they claim that this was just a minor disruption, but I will tell you that 2 hours and 48 minutes, effectively 3 hours of downtime, doesn't feel minor. Doesn't feel minor. So on the heels of their major disaster, we have a minor incident, service health. And the thing is, it affected pretty much every single location and every single product. Now, it didn't affect every product, but it affected some of the major ones. So if you use Google and you don't use Google Compute Engine or Google Kubernetes Engine or SQL or their databases, you were probably fine. But then and load balancing. Then I don't know exactly what you were using in Google Cloud because it affected some of their most largest and main products from their Alloy DB, Apogee, to their Google Cloud Engine and Compute. So it was a pretty major outage for 3 hours. It looks like a pretty minor incident bug. So basically there was a script that was run. If you go into it, there was a script that was run that was supposed to reboot one VPC, and it basically went through and rebooted 40 some VPCs all at the same time. So a classic example of a bad script that was run in all respects, in an honest way, and just happened to do something pretty negative. Outside of that, GCP didn't have a whole lot more that they released. They did talk about Spanner remaining one of the most powerful performant databases, but I couldn't really find much more information on anything that they released. But hey, cloud storage wasn't affected. That's right. That's right. If all you were using was their cloud storage, you're fine. You're absolutely... If you used nothing else, you survived. You survived. So it's been 2 pretty rough weeks in a row for GCP, and they didn't release anything that I saw outside of this. Moving on, Azure has the public preview of the app configuration extension for AKS. So this is just the Azure app configuration. Extension is now basically able to be leveraged inside of their Kubernetes service. So this extension allows you to install and manage Azure app configuration, Kubernetes provider on your AKS cluster via Azure Resource Manager. So it just allows you better integration into Kubernetes, into Azure. So if you're using both of those things, you can use them together now instead of separately. The Azure portal now offers in-context observability for your Azure Kubernetes object overviews. So basically, it just provides a better overview of the workloads running in your Kubernetes cluster. So, I mean, Azure is the one that I deal with the least, but if I was to use, this is a pretty big deal, I think, that you're able to see these for your deployments to investigate right on the dashboard. I can't believe they didn't have this before now. I mean, this is an amazing tool, but I also can't believe it's been this, it was May 22nd, 2024, since we now got this in there. So good job, and I'm glad. Windows gRPC support is now available in App Service for preview. Do people use Windows and write apps for it? I don't think so. I think this is a meme. Expanding the extensibility model to Pulumi in Azure. So Pulumi is another, so if you're flocking away from Terraform as your infrastructure as code, there's Tofu, OpenTofu, and there's Pulumi. I've heard good things about Pulumi. I haven't actually ever used it. Most of you guys know I don't like infrastructure as code in general. Public preview, Azure Firewall integration in Microsoft Copilot for security. This is actually one of the things where I said statistical analysis would be really amazing, and it looks like Azure is bringing this integration to Copilot, something I've said should be done for a long period of time. The statistical analysis for anomaly detection in security seems like the place to be using AI. Train it on the data that's happening, and then tell me when something strange happens, something that's not normal. This is where security, this is where AI should be the gold winner, the gold medal winner. Is that anomaly detection? So I'm excited about that. I look forward to seeing more of it. I don't like infrastructure as code. Okay, I'll make it a video. Why I don't like infrastructure as code. What does that go under? I'll do distributed systems. Why I don't like AC. I'll do that one tomorrow during my Saturday stream. Since it's early enough for people in Africa. All right. C# is still big in enterprises, yeah. But don't you run C# on Linux? Like, don't you use just the open source Roslyn compiler and compile it for Linux? I don't know. I guess that's what I thought people did. I didn't know they actually used Windows to run that code. I could be very wrong, though. All right, we have an ad starting. So I'm going to take a pause. For those of you who are not getting ads, whether you're on YouTube or you live in a country that does not play you ads, welcome to the ad show, where we get 3 minutes of ads. And yeah, I get to talk to you for 3 minutes. Let's see. So later today, right after we do the news, as long as I have time, which it looks like I'm going to have time, plenty of time, we have, I'm calling it React, but I'm not really React. Well, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if you guys like this. I'm finding articles that I think are interesting to discuss. Now, I haven't actually read the articles, but what I did was I took notes. So this is the the topic, debunking common Kubernetes myths. So I listed out my own myths before reading the article. And we can go and then read the article, see where I sync up, where I disagree. I think it will be really fun, and it's a little bit different than reacting. The other one that I have here is this article on WebAssembly and Kubernetes go better together. That's all I know about the article. So I then wrote up a bunch of my thoughts on it. We're gonna talk about those, and yeah, we're gonna see how that goes. We're gonna see if you guys like it. I don't generally like React content because it feels really cheap to me, where you're just basically, yeah, I don't love it. But it also comes to a point where people want content from you, and coming up with new content all the time is difficult. So it's really, if you have this type of stuff, it's a conversation starter. So that's what I'm using it as. We'll see how you guys like it. It's my take on it. Hopefully it's a good take. So we'll do that right after the news. WebAssembly on Kubernetes has caused you pain this week. Jabril, we should do a project together. On it, with it. All right, so the ad's ending shortly. And then we'll jump into AWS news. AWS had just a few things. And this is my general take. I think that as software engineers, we too often go by hype-driven development, where we get hyped about something, AI, and that's all we can develop. And the thing is, hype-driven development isn't very much of an engineering practice. And so I think it's really good to think critically about the things. And that's what I try to do. It's like HTMX. We are doing a full project leveraging HTMX. So it's not just me theoretically disliking it. It's me having experience so I can talk intelligently about it. But enough about that. The ads are over. Let's jump into the news, the rest of the news. AWS released two things. One was a new open source AWS Advanced Python Wrapper driver, now available for Azure. I'm sorry, Amazon. Please keep paying me. Amazon Aurora and Amazon RDS. AWS doesn't pay me anything, trust me. So basically, there's now an advanced Python wrapper driver. So if you're using Python, I'm assuming from my understanding of this is to help support things like machine learning models, a lot of stuff that's done in Python. So they've done a better, more advanced Python wrapper for their databases to help you leverage those things in your ML thing. They don't specifically say that, but that's what I see as coming through this. It's licensed under the Apache 2, so that's actually another really great thing is this advanced Python wrapper. If you're trying to implement that same functionality in your thing, but you don't have, let's say you're writing in a real language like Rust, you're able to then actually see how they implemented something and implement it in Rust with a few extra lines of code. So I love it when these types of things, the things that they're not selling, are made open source. It's fantastic. Great place to learn too. AWS announces a new AWS Direct Connect location in Chicago, Illinois. So if you're a Direct Connect location person, there's a new one. So that's about it. And that's all my cloud news. Did you guys have anything else in cloud news? The next bit of news, if nobody has any other cloud news to release, is JetBrains news. We have a whole section on JetBrains news. There was 2 things that JetBrains did. They didn't fit in any of the other stuff. It wasn't open source. It was really the engineering news, like the software engineering news, but there was nothing else. It's just JetBrains stuff. So anyways, here we go. JetBrains news. Aqua, the IDE for test automation. So they released a new IDE, Aqua, that's designed for test automation. So you see here they have a bunch of things listed: Kotlin, Python, JavaScript, TypeScript. Cypress is an interesting one, Playwright, Selenium, these type of front-end test frameworks. So it's designed to make testing easier. Now, I don't 100% know what that means, but there is non-commercial. So if you have an open source and want to try using it, that's an option. Now, that being said, they are going to collect your code. They're going to collect your code and train an AI on your code that you use with it. And there's no way to opt out. It will be collected. So that's one thing that kind of is a turn off for some of the JetBrains stuff. Then the next announcement follows the same things. Rust Rover is now released and includes a free non-commercial option. The problem with their free non-commercial options, there's actually 2 problems if you go through this with their free non-commercial option, is if you dig into it, it will train its AI on your code. It's probably fine for me, but kind of sucks that that's a requirement for it. It's already non-commercial. You're already not making money on whatever you're doing. But on top of that, they stripped out JavaScript and TypeScript and any front-end stuff from that free. So if you're doing like a full stack with some JavaScript and some stuff, that's actually not available in Rust Rover, which is another separation where this now feels like a nickel and dime you. Because if I was to use, so JetBrains actually makes some really good IDEs. I'm not taking that from them. But if I was to use them, I would have to buy 4 IDEs, one for Rust, one for Go, because Go got Rust stripped out of it. So I would have to have Rust, Go, possibly the C++ one, because I do dabble with C++ here and there again. Plus, now I'd have to have their PyCharm or whatever. I think it's called PyCharm. They're not Python. Whatever their one for JavaScript is. It just starts to feel very expensive. It starts to feel very expensive. I was gonna say, Gregory, that's kind of my take on it, is like, I like their IDEs. But because they've started to remove other languages and plugins, so like there used to be in the Go one, there used to be a Rust plugin, but there's not anymore. They removed it. So you can't write Rust in your Go one. You have to buy the Rust one. You can't write TypeScript or JavaScript in any of them except for the TypeScript one now. So you have to buy that one too. And so it feels very much like and I just don't know anybody that writes only one language. Like, honestly, how many of you out there right now write exactly one language? And I know that there's bundles that give you all of them. I get it, but now we're talking about a lot more expensive. Again, that's just right. 3 languages for you. And I think at 3 languages, it's still actually cheaper to buy the individual ones than it is to, because like you don't get a discount on buying another one. You only get a discount if you buy all of them, which you're not going to, nobody writes that many languages either. So anyways, that's kind of my, it's a little sad that it goes that way. I also don't love if you're going to write this for open source, we'll let you use it for free, but we will train on your stuff. That, I get it, and I'm okay paying for good stuff. I don't feel like that's a great free trade-off for people writing open source that aren't making any money. Right, Gregory, sometimes more. When do you have to open up your PHP project because it's still running your blog? OX Apollo, how are you doing? You just joined for the end of the news. We're done. News is done. Big takeaway for today. Voyager 1, we have taken it back from alien control. And we've actually freed 2 of the 4 subprocessors on it. 2 are still under alien control, but we'll work on those. All right, so the last thing. Actually, it's amazing that, let me pull up a stat for you. Let me pull up a stat. Just so that you know it's not me talking out of my derriere here. The Voyager 1 was supposed to last for 5 years. It was designed to last for 5 years. When was Voyager 1 launched? Was 1977. So something designed to last 5 years. You can do the math, but this thing is way older than I am. It's it's pretty amazing. Like it actually is pretty amazing. Actually, one of my calls has been, we should create a new one right now designed to last 100 years and send it. Like, send that thing now. We should be sending one of these every 10 years. Like that, like, let's get on it. Let's every 10 years, let's send one. Iterative design. All right. We should send our AI models on there. Oh, okay. So, last section for today. This is I'm taking my spin on React. So if you guys have an article you guys want me to cover, let me know and I will do it. I have a Discord. You can leave it on there. We're going to go through these, but it's not purely Merrick Reacts because I don't purely love that, but we're trying it the Merrick way. We're going to see how this goes, and you guys let me know if you like it or if you hate it. That was the end of the news, and but we have enough time to go on and do this. Aliens. I just come up with it as an alien joke because, you know, like, we don't know why it started sending as gibberish back, but that was really the alien language. I thought that was like the most fun joke that I've come up with so far, was that it was alien control of the machine. You know, that's how far out it's gotten. 22.5 light hours away, which is actually kind of far. Okay, so let me know how you guys like these, if we should do more of them, or if you guys hate them and we should stop them right away. You could say it nicer than that, but you can also say that, and that will be good. All right, let's jump into it. So I saw this. Actually, let me put a marker in. I saw this, and I thought, that's an interesting conversation. WebAssembly and Kubernetes go better together. And I wrote up my own feelings as I know them right now. Without reading the article, I wanted to think about what could possibly be with Kubernetes and Wasm that are amazing. So what does Wasm solve that containers do not? Because I assume when you say Kubernetes and Wasm go together, you're talking about replacing containers with Wasm. Now, I've heard the more secure argument, and this is maybe if each process has its own Wasm runtime, maybe per customer runtime. So, like a single customer would share a runtime. But then is that secure enough if you do any type of sharing or have a single Wasm runtime? Does that actually provide you that security, that isolation that you need? I know that there's a bunch of articles on how to make that more secure, but none of that has come to fruition just yet. Startup time. This is something I've heard, but this is another thing. They'll talk about how fast Wasm startup time is, but it's for an already running Wasm runtime. If you have to do isolation on a per Wasm runtime for your customers running untrusted code, I actually think it's much slower than a container would be. I also think that containers are, I've never had a container, even a database container, that takes more than 5 seconds to start. It's not, I don't know if those are. So anyways, those are the two things that I could think of. Hopefully the article has some other things that I'm not thinking of. Like I said, I didn't read the article. I came up with my own things so we could cross-reference what the person writing the article said and what I'm thinking right off the top of my head. I spent about half an hour writing this up with just thinking on it. Well, and I thought about it some last night while I was trying to go to sleep. To be honest, that's about how much time I spent on it. All right, so Wasm cons, lack of language support. You have to write it in Rust, Golang, Dart, Python, Java, Kotlin, JavaScript, or C++. If you're wanting to do it in anything else, it doesn't work because your language actually has to support compiling for Wasm. There's the requirement to transpile. Your code only runs in Wasm once it's transpiled, like it's a intermediate language that's run in the runtime. It still sucks to debug. This is a solvable problem. I double wrote this. It lacks good debugging, build and testing tooling. So again, a solvable problem, but it's kind of a still problem. Wasm's been out for a while, and I haven't seen these tools gain a ton of traction. And I almost wonder if it's a transpilation error or issue, because if you look at TypeScript, maybe the largest, best supported transpilation thing still has some of these types of errors, even though it has amazing tooling around it. It kind of feels like that. Other cons was that it supports Java or Python and JavaScript. So, that's actually a con, but it is what it is. Some Wasm pros, it lacks PHP and Fortran support. I said it lacks R support, but I actually think it supports R. All right. So then I was thinking, what other alternatives are there? So we have containers. Obviously, this is talking about containers. When you're talking about Kubernetes, you think containers. So the other alternative that I thought of was Firecracker, which I pulled this up because this, along with the streamlined kernel loading process, enables a less than 125 millisecond startup time and a less than 5 megabyte memory footprint, which is pretty fantastic, to be honest. So then I asked ChatGPT because I felt like this was a fairly good statistical analysis and analysis of the internet, effectively. I'm making fun of my own spelling. And this is what they were saying. Language agnostic. I don't really agree with that, but whatever. Performance. I also don't really agree with that because it's less performant than the native code, which you would be running in a container. So it's less than native code, which is an overhead. Security. It is more secure than running a naked full admin process, but I have actually yet to be proven that it is more secure than a container. I know people will talk about memory boundaries, but that's not actually implemented yet, and there are papers on how to fix that. And then the problem with how to fix those is it's going to slow down the performance. 100%. That's what the papers even say. Nobody knows exactly how much, but that's what I'm saying, Apollo. How dare they support JavaScript? That's the key there. Portability. This is fine, except that, yeah, I mean, it's fine, but my container runs on any Linux as well, so I don't know. I know what they're talking about, like IoT and mobile devices, so maybe there's a thing to be said there. But portability doesn't really affect us people that are working on the back end. This might be more of an issue for mobile devices, IoT, and front end, devices. But back end developers, I've never had a portability desire or issue. Size and I'm not running Raspberry Pis in my data center. Maybe you are, and if you are, cool, but I'm not. Also, my code compiles for Raspberry Pi, so I don't even care then. But size and load time, WASL modules are typically smaller in size compared to traditional JavaScript. This is true, but so is my Rust code. Native code is smaller in size than traditional JavaScript. Load times is also the interesting thing because these load times are in the same already running runtime. But if you're trying to talk about hard, untrusted multi-tenancy, you have to run, as far as I understand, you have to run a separate WASM runtime for a separate WASM VM to have that security. And in that case, I cannot believe. Now, the problem is, I don't see anybody, and if somebody knows an example, I don't see anybody using WASM for untrusted hard multi-tenancy with code that I can access. I've never seen a runtime used in that way. So I am struggling with this in those scenarios. Don't care. Tooling an ecosystem is, I actually think that this is a negative. I think the tooling and ecosystem is kind of bad at this point. I'm also not sure you're future-proofing. That's okay. Let's get into the article. Let's see what the article has to say at this point. Like I said, I didn't want this to be like a standard React. I wanted to take my notes and my thoughts, not research. Those were just my thoughts before I read anything. Maybe I'll learn something new. All right. Ferrymon co-founder and CEO. Okay. SpinCube. I should have looked this up. I didn't read anything about it, okay? Like I said, I'm coming to this new. Maybe this is the thing that does it how I've been wanting. Made with contributions from SUSE. Okay. Microsoft. I don't know about that. Where's the GitHub? It's supposed to be. Okay, here we go. SpinCube. Oh gosh. Container D shim spin. Ooh, that gets me excited. Okay, well, we'll come back to that. Let's read the article. In this interview, we dive into the details of WebAssembly, format, and Kubernetes, and Matt Butcher, co-founder and CEO of Ferrymon. Ferminion. Butcher is passionate about WebAssembly, distributed systems, and artificial intelligence. Butcher is, as is everyone these days. Butcher is one of the original creators or had a hand in the creation of Helm. Oh, not a good start. Cloud native application bundles. Okay. Open application model, don't know what that is. Glide, oh, this was an attempt to fix Go. And the Crustlet. Okay. He has co-written many books, including Learning Helm and Go in Practice. In this interview, okay, let's go. Let's go. Can you please introduce yourself? Blah, blah, blah. I spent my career in software at the intersection of distributed computing, developing tooling, and supply chain security. It wasn't really one benefit that drew me to Wasm, but how the characteristics of this technology mapped to the problems I was trying to solve, and more generally, the problems we've been trying to solve as an industry. Portability, startup and execution speed, strong capability-based sandboxing, and artifact size. So this kind of goes back to my things here. More secure startup times. These were along the lines of what I was thinking that they might be talking about. Again, I'm not sold on any of them, and the portability also, when you're talking about distributed computing, even if you're writing for Windows or Linux, unless you need the same app to run on both, which would be weird, but that might be the case. But my Rust code can compile for both anyways, so I don't know about that. I've never heard of SpinCube, but we'll dig into it. All right. So yeah, I'm not sold on these. The portability, startup, and execution speed. Like I said, there's a lot of variables that go into that, and whether that would beat a container is, yeah, interesting. Strong capability-based sandboxing. Again, containers are adding this type of functionality in all the time, whether you need access to that GPU or not, and things like that. So for a while, containers had an issue with exposing those types of system-level resources. But I think that's actually gotten a lot better as of late. Oh, this is exactly, I don't know why I smacked my own. I meant to tap it like that, but I didn't tap. This is exactly what I was thinking, but I wasn't thinking when I smacked myself. That is embarrassing. Azure Functions, like a way to run a function, but this is where you need that strong multi-tenancy. This is what I was thinking. At Microsoft, we're looking at Azure Function and other similar technologies where we see a lot of waste. Systems sitting idle, 80% or more just waiting for inbound requests. Virtual machines were sitting pre-warmed in a queue, consuming memory and CPU. This is a waste. I agree. They should do something to fix this. Is Wasm the solution? I'm not sure. Waiting to have a serverless function installed and executed. So basically, they just had this feels more like extra pre-allocation. You just had stuff waiting around to have stuff executed on it that wasn't running stuff. This just seems like bad management on their part, not actually things. And all this wasted was done in the name of performance. We asked ourselves, what if we could find a much more efficient form of compute that could cold start much faster? Then we wouldn't have to pre-warm virtual machines. You'd still need the pre-warm virtual machine to run the Wasm on, right? I don't know that I agree with that, unless if they're saying that this allows them to get rid of all the virtual machines. But Wasm itself is a virtual machine. So again, and if the Wasm virtual machine isn't pre-warmed, then again, I have so many questions that just aren't answered about this. So it was really all about finding a better runtime for the developer pattern that we call serverless functions. Okay. Okay. When we at Fairmont say that, we mean the software design pattern in which a developer does not write a server, but just an event handler. The code is executed with, right. I understand the idea of serverless is just an event handler. Yes, the first generation of serverless gave us a good design pattern, which was based for Lambda, Knative. The implementations were built atop runtimes that were not optimized for that style of workload. Virtual machines can take minutes to start, and containers tend to take a few dozen seconds. That means you either have to pre-warm workloads or take large cold start penalties. Maybe in the old days, Pre-warming is costly, involving paying for CPU and memory while something sits idle. Cold starts, though, have a direct user impact, slow response time. We were attracted to WebAssembly specifically because we were looking for a faster form of compute that would reduce cold start times. And at under 1 millisecond, WebAssembly's cold start time is literally faster than a blink of an eye. Okay. This cannot be starting the WebAssembly runtime. They're using a shared runtime here. And maybe they have a shared runtime that is secure. I haven't seen it. We'll see. Maybe that's their secret sauce here, is they made a runtime that is secure for running distinct untrusted workloads. Yeah. But what surprised us was by reducing cold start, utilized WebAssembly's a small binary size, and writing an effective serverless function executor, we've been able to boost density. That in turn cuts costs and improves sustainability, since this generation of serverless is doing more with fewer. Do more with less. That's the key. That's the key. Serverless functions are the main way people do edge programming. What? Don't do serverless functions for edge computing. That's the edge is a lie. This is 100% edge is a lie. Because if your serverless is hitting a database, then all you're doing is moving your compute further away from the data that it's trying to do stuff with. This is the dumbest thing. If this is why people are using serverless functions, I think this is the dumbest thing. Unless if you are using those serverless functions to serve CDN stuff, which already is kind of serverless because you're serving a CDN. Unless if you're doing something like that with a distributed database or cache, it's the dumbest thing. Because of this runtime profile, Wasm is a phenomenal fit for edge computing. We have seen content delivery networks, CDNs, yeah, like Fastly and more recent Cloudflare, demonstrate that. And we're beginning to see more uses of Wasm. But why do you need edge compute for your CDN? I don't get that. Somebody's got to enlighten me. I feel like I must be the dumbest person on the block, because I see these things and I just don't understand why people are doing them. But we're beginning to see more use cases of Wasm on constrained and disconnected services, from 5G towers to automotive industries, with cars running spin applications because of the efficiency and portability. One second, I think chat got disconnected. Let's see if refreshing that helps. Hopefully it's reconnected. I just lost all chat messages, but hopefully it's reconnected. All right. The other really nice thing about WebAssembly is that the OS and architecture neutral. It can run on Windows, Linux, and Mac. Sure. Look, I don't know why this is such a big thing. I never have been like, I want my function. So if you go and run a Lambda function, have you cared what OS it runs on? Especially because, look, what we're doing here is we're saying, handle this event. Handle event. What? And this might be an HTTP. It could be an HTTP. It could be anything. HTTP event. It could be whatever. Don't know, don't care. Handle event. Now, why would I care what this ran on? What I would care, unless if you're calling like Windows specific rendering APIs, I guess you could care what this ran on. Now, that being said, if you're calling Windows-specific rendering APIs, are those exposed through the Wasm virtual machine? I doubt it. Maybe they are. That's something to investigate. That's something to investigate. The other thing is, my code has always been able to compile for all of these, right? I don't know a language that doesn't compile for all of them. But I rarely run into a service or product that don't support all platforms. Kubernetes doesn't support Mac. Just saying. Likewise, it can execute on Intel architecture or ARM. That means the developer, but so can all the code that you write today can do this. All your Rust, all your Go, all your C++. There are esoteric old libraries in C++ that don't support ARM because of the threading models and the fencing, specifically the fencing. But that's it. That's it. That means that developers can write and compile code without having to know the destination is. Sure. I don't know that that's a huge benefit, but there it is. Yeah. Like I said, my code compiles for these just fine. Wasm is indebted to earlier bytecode languages for sure, but it's more than that. WebAssembly was built with a stringent security sandboxing needs. Deny by default and capabilities based on system inferences or interfaces are essential to a technology that assumes it is running untrusted code. Now, this is where it doesn't actually provide good memory safety. Not yet. Like I said, there's actually research papers on how it could support memory safety, but it doesn't yet. And so, as far as I know, it's no safer at this point than a container. And with containers, you can even have something like not runc. What is it called? The kernel by Google. gvisor. You can run gvisor and actually get that memory safety. It's a penalty, cost penalty, but you can do it. Secondly, Wasm was built with the stated goal that many different languages, ideally any language, can be compiled to Wasm. Again, though, this is on the language to support, not a Wasm. So your language has to support compiling to Wasm. JVM and .NET both started with a different perspective. The specific language be built to accommodate the runtime. In contrast, the very first language to get Wasm support was C, Rust, Go, Python, and JavaScript all follow along afterwards. Rust has amazing support for Wasm. WebAssembly demonstrated that it can target for existing programming language, while others decides that neither Java nor .NET have been able to do this broadly. Well, did I say decides? That didn't make any sense, and I went with it. WebAssembly demonstrated that it could be a target for existing programming languages, while after decades, and neither Java nor .NET have been able to do this broadly. Moreover, WebAssembly was designed for speed both in terms of cold start and runtime performance. While Java has always been notoriously slow startup times, WebAssembly binaries take less than a millisecond to cold start. Okay? Doesn't Java support WebAssembly? I feel like that's a misleading statement. Yeah. It does. I feel like that's a misleading statement. Oh, no. I think what they're saying here is that no other place, like nobody targeted Java, but that's actually not true. You have like Kotlin, you have Groovy, you actually have a whole bunch of Scala that all targeted the JVM, right? This is misleading either way that you read it. Yeah. So either they're saying that it's not supported in .NET and Java, which is misleading, or they're saying that nobody targeted the Java or .NET runtime like they have with WebAssembly, which is also not true because Java has a whole bunch of languages that target the JVM. I just listed a bunch. This article was written, I think soon. I mean, it was just, yeah, May 22nd. Moreover, WebAssembly was designed for speed in both terms of cold start. Like I said, unless if you have one that will, you can safely run multiple. I don't believe this. I actually just don't believe this. But the greatest thing about WebAssembly is that it's actually successful. that if it is actually accessible, it won't be long until both Java and .NET can compile to WebAssembly. This is actually just not true. They do right now. The .NET team has said that they'll fully support WebAssembly in late 2024. Hopefully Java won't be too far behind. Exploring the synergy between Wasm and Kubernetes, SpinCube was released. Maybe there's like some edge support that's not supported. Like maybe that's what they're saying is like they're not fully supported, but not sure. Not sure. Because Wasm on their website lists Java and Kotlin, which is a Java language. So I know like Kotlin is a huge language that does WebAssembly, which is a JVM language. So again, I don't know. Most of us are on Kubernetes for a long time. We built Helm, Brigade, OAM, OSM, and many other Kubernetes projects. When we switched to WebAssembly, we knew we'd start with developer tools and work our way towards orchestrators. So we started with Spin to get developers building useful things. We built Ferrymon Cloud so that developers could be able to deploy their apps to our infrastructure. Behind the scenes, Ferrymon Cloud runs HashiCorp's Nomad. It's been a spectacular orchestrator for our needs. As I said earlier, we've been able to host 3,000 users, supplied apps per worker node in our cluster, orders of magnitude higher than what we could have achieved with containers. But inevitably, we felt that the pull of Kubernetes gravity, so many organizations are operating mature Kubernetes cluster, it would be hard to convince them to switch to Nomad. So we worked together with Microsoft, SUSE, Liquid Replay, and others to build an excellent Kubernetes solution. Microsoft did some of the heaviest lifting when they wrote the Containerd support for Spin. SpinCube's immediate popularity surprised even us. People are eager to try a serverless runtime that outperforms Knative and other early attempts at serverless. Should we try SpinCube for the Null Cloud? Should we do this? I don't know. I wasn't prepared to do this. There are two parts of working with LLMs. There's training a model, which takes huge amounts of resources and time, and there's using the inferred against a model. This later part can benefit a lot from runtime optimization, so we have focused exclusively on serverless inferencing with LLMs. At its core, WebAssembly is a compute technology. We usually think of that in terms of CPU usage, but it's equally applicable to GPUs that AI uses for inferencing. Sure. So we'll be able to build SDKs inside the WebAssembly host that allows developers to do LLM inferencing without having to concern themselves with the underlying GPU architecture or resources. Most importantly, Ferrymon makes it possible to time slice GPU usage to a very fine level of granular. That's cool. This is actually really cool. But this also sounds like the marketing thing. While most AI inferencing engines lock the GPU for the duration of the server process, blah, blah, blah. This is what makes a Wasm viable on the edge. I have no idea what this means about the edge. I hate the edge. Like I said, there's super good uses for it. CDNs are amazing, but the edge is mostly a lie. The edge is mostly a lie. Go watch that video. Where functions run for only a few IBlinks, those edge nodes will be only a modest number of GPUs to serve thousands of applications. Maybe. Inferencing takes a while. WebAssembly is still gaining new features. Most audacious design goal. Wasm is only as successful it can run all major programming languages and run them in more or less a uniform way. Yeah. Is Kotlin not... How is Kotlin doing? I know Kotlin's big. Well, I think things are progressing well for all major languages other than Java. Until those languages have complete support, they have not reached their full potential. Wow. Let's unpack this statement right here. A language cannot reach its full potential without transpilation support. Is that a statement we want to state? That is what they're saying right here, is that a language is incapable of reaching its full potential without transpilation support. Yeah, I know Kotlin does, which is just a JVM language. I don't know. Obviously, there's probably some things that aren't fully supported or something in the WASI interface. That would be my guess. It feels very markety, Jabril. I agree. Transpilation is more of a quality of life thing, isn't it? Yeah. Wow. I want to talk to this guy about this statement. Because what he's saying is, until you can transpile to another language, your language is garbage. Ooh, those are fighting words. I'd like him to write a little wasm. Just write a little by hand. I'd like to see it. All right. How did you guys like that? Better together. All right. I have another one, but I don't think I have enough time. That was a little bit longer than I expected. So I'll do this one tomorrow, along with why I don't like infrastructure as code. Why I don't like infrastructure as code is my own take. And then this is another article. We'll read through it. I took my top 7 myths. So this is debunking common Kubernetes myths. I don't have the time during lunch, so this is just my lunch break. So I'm gonna have to call it. How did you like that? Would you guys like to review more articles like that? If you find an interesting hot topic, I'd love to do it this way, where I come up with my own take on it, and then we compare and we see where I could learn some. I'm actually interested at this point to take SpinCube out for a ride and see what it has to offer. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm always up for being wrong. It's the one way I learn is be wrong, experiment, and move on and see where it lands. So let me know if you want to take SpinCube out for a test. Let me know how you like these segments, as this will be making it to my YouTube. If you watch this on YouTube, let me know how you're liking it in post. And join me live on Twitch and YouTube Live. So anyways, I gotta get going. Thank you, everybody, and have yourselves a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for some more fantastic content. Thanks, OX Apollo. That was kind of the hope and attention, was that I actually did work myself. Like for this one, I did some research. I looked up the alternatives. I asked ChatGPT what it thought some of this stuff was. So the idea was to, have some of my, and actually document them. So these are like my top myths that I thought of when I just was laying in bed last night. I was like, what are my top 7 myths? I thought about them some other times as well, not just then, but, and so then I want to take that and, talk about why these are my myths that I think people have and what theirs are, because most of the time these people come from a different perspective, and it's good to try to put those two together. So anyways, let me know how you guys like them. And anyways, I do need to get going. That was an actual real statement as well. Jabril says, I'm still very confused about the use case for WASM on Kubernetes. Look, I'll do this tomorrow too. What we'll do is why WASM. I'll tell you what people think it will do. then what we need to do is validate if we can do that. If we can do that, amazing. If we can't do that, then we either need to fix it in WASM or we need to look for a different solution. Now, I actually like a solution that doesn't require transpilation. To be honest, like that's one of my biggest things is it's nice that WASM exists for portability. Let's say you know what I think would be fantastic for WASM is like a front-end framework that would run on Mac and Windows and whatnot. Those types of things. Plugin support would be an amazing WASM thing. If you had a WASM thing running on your server, amazing. Absolutely amazing. There are certain things I think WASM would be really good at. But what these people are talking about is a different topic altogether, and I'll talk about it tomorrow. Anyways, have yourselves a great weekend. I have to run. See you guys tomorrow. And also, be thinking about what you'd guys like to do Monday. I'm free Monday. I don't have work. I'm going to try to stream for like 4 hours in the morning, maybe. What do you guys want to do? I want to do something fun. So anyways, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.